Go.
I want to welcome you to another episode of Marking the Times. This is Dr. Mark Hitchcock, and I'm here in my house. We've been filming these episodes here recently from our living room, and I enjoy this new setting. And as you can see, our Christmas trees behind us, our house all decorated for Christmas. So I hope you all have a Merry Christmas. I hope things are going well for you and your family this time of year. What I want to talk with you about in this episode of Marking the Times is just the increasing authoritarianism that we see in our world today. You know, authoritarianism is nothing new. When you think about most people throughout human history have really grown up under authoritarian regimes. Throughout history, you have kings and monarchs and dictators who really dominate most people in the world. And the same thing is true today. I mean, in a lot of the major world powers today, certainly in Russia and China and North Korea, Iran, kind of a lot of the bad actors in our world today, all those countries are dominated by dictatorial regimes. But what we see today that's kind of changing is in places like America that are obviously, you know, a republic, a democratic republic, we're seeing greater authoritarianism even in these Western countries. And there's just a greater a movement towards greater and greater government control in our world today. And so we've really gone throughout history from tribalism to nationalism and then now to globalism. And so we see this happening today, and this is ultimately all heading toward the global urban empire that the Bible predicts in Revelation 13, where the coming Antichrist is going to rule over the world politically, economically, and religiously. And so power is being concentrated in the hands of fewer and fewer people. And really a lot of this is being precipitated by these cascading crises we see in our world today. I know I've mentioned this in previous episodes, but COVID obviously has created a position for governments to seize a lot more control. Climate change is kind of the next thing on the horizon that's going to allow people to do that. I read a quote recently I thought was pretty good. Someone said, "Power of the state is an aphrodisiac." Power and the control of politicians is intoxicating for them. So they're leveraging these crises to seize more and more power. Even I think what we see in America today with the massive government spending is another way to seize power because what it does is it creates dependence, creates people who are dependent. It also is going to create inflation, which the government then will have to come in and have more control to solve that problem. So really, you think about today, the answer to every crisis is really the same. It's more government. You could say it like this: the default position today, even in America, is more coercion and more control. And when it comes to mandates and all the different things we've seen, this default position is coercion and more government control. I looked through a book the other night. It's an excellent new book by Ben Shapiro. I've been wanting to look at it for some time, called The Authoritarian Moment. And basically what Ben Shapiro, his thesis is that there's a growing authoritarianism in our world today, and there's authoritarianism on the right and the left. But the authoritarianism on the right is often called out, and it's called what it is. But the authoritarianism on the left is allowed to continue to grow. And a couple of interesting statements in his book, he says that the institutions of power are being weaponized by the authoritarian left to silence opposition. So institutions of power are being weaponized by the authoritarian left to silence opposition. We see that at the government level. We see it with big media. We see it with big tech, all of them working in concert to silence the opposition. Again, greater and greater authoritarianism and government control. One thing Shapiro says in his book, this is a fascinating statement or little phrase, he calls it woke cultural authoritarianism. So what we see today is a woke cultural authoritarianism that's growing in our country today, where again, you know, opposition or dissent is not tolerated. Everybody has to have the same view. Everybody has to have the same view about COVID and vaccines. Everybody has to have the same view about climate change. Everybody has to have the same view about racial issues. There's kind of a group think. And if you're not part of that, then you're outside of this group and you're going to be demonized and deplatformed for that view. One other quote Shapiro has in his book, he says, "Something there is in man that loves a dictator." That's a telling statement. Something there is in man that loves a dictator. And we see it again all over the world in a lot of the major countries in the world. We haven't seen it in the West, but it's starting to grow and starting to surge here. And so I think Ben Shapiro's onto something in this book, The Authoritarian Moment. But the authoritarian moment is just foreshadowing of what's coming. There's going to be an authoritarian season or era that's going to lead ultimately to the coming of the Antichrist, who's going to come and rule and dominate the entire world. So what we see today is a foreshadow, a faint foreshadow of what's coming in the future. Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of Marking the Times. God bless you, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.